broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Chantal, and I'm the Marketing Executive here at Sagittarius. I'll be hosting today's webinar, which will look at intent research. I'm joined by today's presenter and Digital Marketing Account Manager here at Sagittarius, Kier. Today's webinar is expected to last around an hour, with some time at the end for questions, which you can enter using the questions box on your screen. We will be recording today's session and endeavour to share these with you before the end of the week. That's everything from me.
Excellent. Right, I promise that I'll try not to make it last a full hour because I appreciate everybody has lives, and I'll try and get through the slides as swiftly as possible and an accessible way, trying not to use much technical jargon. If there's any questions about anything I have said, as Chantal said, you can ask them at the end. We've got kind of contact details there as well, so you can get in touch and send any praise or questions that you may have. Right, so without further ado, we're looking at search intent today. I'm going to ask you a question first of all, and that is, how do you create content? So at the moment, do you spot a high volume keyword that perhaps you don't have content for that you think that could be an opportunity? Do you then start creating content, focusing on that keyword, delivering brand messaging perhaps? Do you go on to run that content through a tool, check how many keywords there are in the content and how well optimized it is for those keywords? And do you then publish that content and eagerly look to see where it ranks? I'm going to guess that most of you have at some point done something like this in this process. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, but it kind of misses one key element when you're looking at content, and that is the intent behind why a keyword was ever typed in the first place. And that's kind of the key point here. It's creating content that is really interesting to write and fills a gap on your site and can meet a perceived need is really, really good. But if you haven't thought about why somebody's actually gone to the effort of putting that keyword into Google or another search engine, it's very difficult to understand what they're actually looking for. And I'm going to flag straight away up front here, this is talking about search content. So this is anything that's being served by a search engine. The same doesn't necessarily apply for social media. So please don't stop creating really interesting content on social media just because I've said that there may not be kind of intent behind a search behind it. This is purely looking at what comes through a search engine. So when we're looking at that, what do we mean when we say intent? Simply, it's what motivates a user to search. What does a user actually want to achieve by searching for whatever it is they've searched for? You can kind of sum it up to say it's the force that's driven a user to search for some form of answer. And it's kind of Google's biggest challenge, and I'm going to focus mainly on Google today. And it's also your biggest challenge as a, say, digitally focused brand. Again, why are people actually looking for whatever it is you're trying to serve them? Now, I know there's probably somebody thinking now, right, that's great, but isn't keyword volume more important? And I've thought long and hard about the answer to that and came up with no, it isn't. It's a great steer as to where there's demand, and you can definitely use it as a starting point. But if you only focus on volume and you don't think about the intent behind a search, you can potentially risk not appearing in a desirable search position, serving content that isn't engaging, and ultimately you can lose a potential customer or an advocate. So what benefits come from actually matching intent? You can look at a reduced bounce rate onto your page. So that's someone coming onto a page and then leaving after only seeing that one page. You can look for an increased click-through rate. So that's people actually clicking through from the SERP, which is going to be used, and that's a search engine results page. So it's a bit of jargon there for you. You can look at increased dwell time and page engagement, and hopefully reduced funnel friction. So somebody coming through maybe just with brand awareness and getting all the way through to some kind of conversion or engagement you're looking to drive. A wider reach for the brand and the pages, and ultimately increased revenue. It's increased revenue for yourself, but also it's important to think of this as how Google makes money. Now, we know they make a lot of money by advertising, but Google came to be because there were a lot of terrible search engines around back in the day. Anybody that remembers things like Alta Vista or Lycos or various really stuffy search engines that didn't actually really serve you what you wanted, and it was kind of a variation around some words that you may have typed. Google came into being, it was really quick, and it just gave you results. Google's main focus now is making sure it gives you the right results. So how does it do that? So we promised that this would be quite a speedy webinar, not last a full hour. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of Google in one slide, just so you actually can go back to your jobs. If you look at where Google started, as we said, it was kind of a simple matching of text strings. So it would have been, what keyword have you typed in? Does this page have these keywords? Great, let's match it. It was quite simple. Obviously, there was a lot more to it than that, and I'm really giving you quite a skipped version of how this works, but this was the main mechanism in the past. As things have moved on, there's been algorithmic improvements, and that means that Google now looks at relationships of things rather than actual text strings. So it now looks at how things actually are linked together, how different words relate to each other, and the context in which those words are used. And that's been kind of driven by 2015's introduction of rank brain, which you have to say really closely and carefully. When that was introduced, the focus was shifted to kind of the intent behind the search, and it's using machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand why people are searching for certain things, how things are linked. It's almost a humanizing of search. It's trying to present that right answer first every single time, no matter what you type in. That is a really top level idea of what Google's looking at. And the focus shifts more and more to actually getting the intent right, because if you get the intent right, you can generally serve the right content. So let's look at intent in action. What does it actually look like? And to do that, we've looked at cats in Google, because ultimately that's what about 90% of people actually look for in search engines, possibly. So back in 2017, if you search for cats, you would see a page much like this. So there are about 880 million results. The top 3 results are a mix of Cats Protection and Cats the Musical. So it's not entirely clear why you search for cats. You might be looking for something about cats, or you might be looking for the musical. Google isn't certain, so it's mixing up the results it's giving you. It's also interesting saying that cats only live for 4 to 5 years back in 2017, which may or may not be true. And there's a theme throughout here that actually Google doesn't always get it right. So whilst it's really useful to use Google to your advantage, just be aware that it's still progressing and still changing and still learning itself. If we flick forward to June 2018, you'll see a completely different cats result. So we've now got 2.8 billion results, and the results are all about cats, the animals. There are one mention on there of Cats the Musical, and that's in the news story. But other than that, it's purely about cats, animals. Google's serving cat videos because, again, that's why most people search for things. And it knows that's the case. It analyzes what people are searching for, and it serves the right results. But it also knows that people are looking for general stories and information about cats. So it says your knowledge panel with information about cats, and no real mention of the musical, because in a year it's evolved that much. Apparently also cats have as well, because you can see they now live for almost 16 years. So their lifespan has tripled in just 1 year. And there's that Cats musical story down there in top stories, which you can kind of ignore. It's news stories, certain things can pop into, but the general intent there, Google knows now, is just looking for information about animals. If you search the same for Cats musical, you see a completely different results page. So gone are the videos. You can now see the knowledge panel, rather than talking about cats animals, is now about the musical, showing you the songs that are in the musical, other musicals people search for, videos down the bottom around the actual musical itself, and no mention of cats at all. So it's completely split out that intent within a year into completely different results pages. So things move on really, really quickly. And that's kind of really important to note, that this is not something that is static. If you see a Google results page today, it doesn't mean it's going to look like that in 2 weeks' time. And there's a really good current example of that at the moment, which we'll come on to towards the end. So how do we actually categorize intent? There is a kind of traditional school of thought that you can categorize search as transactional, informational, or navigational. You may hear this described as do, know, or go searches. And a do search would be perhaps somebody's looking to achieve a specific action. Maybe they're trying to buy a specific product or book a service. An informational query or no query would be where a user's wanting to learn about a particular subject. And a go or navigational query is generally someone looking for a brand or looking to go to a specific website or location. And these are absolutely still completely accurate. But in a world where mobile search has grown drastically and the immediacy of people wanting results has also changed, we now have things called micro moments that Google has defined. And for the purpose of this webinar, that's what we're going to focus on. So what are micro moments? Google defines them as an intent-rich moment when a person turns to a device to act on a need, so to know, go, do, or buy. So you can see they've kind of split them out a bit more now. So we've actually got a buy moment, and you can see you've got know, which is obviously informational, go, perhaps going somewhere, do, how do you perhaps do something, or actually purchasing. They're not new. They've been present in marketing, as we all know, since day one. These different elements of the customer decision journey have always existed, but it's how you actually translate that into how people use a more mobile device to actually find things or do things. As I said, multiple customer touch points have always been important. So the different moments. So this is how Google defines them. And I won't run through all this now for you, but we've got the different types of moments, and I'm going to go through in more detail what each one means. If you want to find out more about them, then Think with Google has some excellent resources here. But ultimately, they all mold into moments where customers want what they want when they want it, and they're drawn to brands that deliver on their needs. So it's the ultimate kind of holy grail, really, of understanding what the customer wants, delivering what that customer wants exactly at the point when they want it. It's what everyone in marketing, whatever brand is searching for ultimately. So an I want to know moment is, Google defines it as someone exploring or researching, but not necessarily in purchase mode. So that could be how old, who is, why do, what do you call, what is, and it could serve a variety of content types. It could be blog posts, articles, or an answer box. There may be no immediate purchase potential within this kind of moment, but there's also potential to push people towards perhaps a secondary soft conversion, so a newsletter sign up. But also it could be that your customer journey is so short that actually somebody looks for some information about a product or a service and then actually converts within an hour or two. So it's not hard to move them from this to a more transactional query. What does an I want to know moment look like in Google? It looks a bit like this. So if you went onto Google and searched for what is Love Island, because a lot of people in my office talk about Love Island, I don't really know what it is. So I put the search in to find out, and you can see that Google knows that that's what I'm looking for. So I've got a knowledge panel on the right-hand side with an overview of what's happening currently in Love Island, an IMDb rating of 5.4, which I don't know if that's true or not. You can see about the cast, you can see top stories, you can see videos, and the top item there is Love Island, what's the big deal from the BBC. So it's very much trying to give me some informational content there about answering that question specifically, whilst also giving me some rich media to help me understand for myself why I don't watch Love Island. You can then look at I want to go moment. So this is someone looking for perhaps a local business or considering buying a product at a nearby store. And it can be confused with perhaps a navigational search. It does include these, but it's not always just a case of saying, where's the local garage, or actually putting in a store and wanting to go there specifically there and then. It can also be just somebody looking for general recommendations in an area. So this could also include where is searches, near me, which is a modifier that people have used a lot in the past, but now isn't always as relevant because Google actually knows, as we'll see in a moment, that you're searching for something that is localized and you don't need to add that. It could be open now. You could be looking to go somewhere straight away. It could be a brand name shop to find out what something is. And this could end up serving local pack results, which we'll look at in a second. It could give you a knowledge panel about that actual brand or store. It can also be used for GPS navigation. So, for example, I've got Android Auto in my car, and if I speak to Google and ask it to go somewhere, it will automatically pull up Google Maps and take me there, no matter what I'm asking it, really. So what can this look like? So if you search for pizza restaurants, which I've done for my house, you can see it's kind of Pizza Express, Pizza Hut, and Ask Italian. So it knows that from me just searching for pizza restaurants, it's pretty likely my intent there is to find one in the local area. That's great. If I switch it and modify it to say pharmacy open now, you can see that it actually changes the way it gives me local results. So actually now it's giving me opening times for certain pharmacies. It's also giving me directions to get there, which is not doing on the pizza restaurants because I haven't actually specified or given Google an idea around my intent to go there and then. But the immediacy in the pharmacy open now is that I do want to go there and then. So you can see that Google changes subtly, constantly, depending on what you're searching for. And it's really easy to miss this kind of stuff if you don't really look at Google that much. But the subtleties that are there for a reason, because it's desperately trying to deliver what it thinks you want. Again, that theme I mentioned earlier about Google not always being perfect, you can see the third organic result on pizza restaurants is the top 10 pizza places in Bruges, which I've been to once. I don't live anywhere near Bruges, so why that's there, I can't honestly tell you. But it's just another learning, really, that this isn't always 100%. Google is constantly trying to evolve to get things right, but there will always be some oddities that no one will be able to explain to you. Moving on to an I want to do moment. So this could be someone wanting help completing a task or trying something new. So this is really interesting for brands because I think it can be much overlooked, but this could be how-to content. It could be tutorial, it could be instructions, it could be help. And this can be somebody who's bought a product from you or who is you're selling a service to them, and they want to actually know how it works. So if you bought a tool to help your PPC or SEO, then actually you want to find out how something works. If you haven't got a how-to knowledge-based content there, that user is pretty much stuck. So it's a really important post-purchase piece of content, but it can also just be interesting content you create. And the content likely to be served could be a tutorial video, could be a forum post, could be a blog post, and again, it could be a knowledge article. And to show you what Google does with this kind of search, just an example, it could be that you're looking to fix a shower. Now, again, if you don't really look at Google and you just kind of think, okay, I'm going to fix a shower, then you scroll down, you're not looking at the intricacies of what it's delivering for you. But you can see here that if you search for how to fix a shower, it's even suggesting to you how much of the video you need to watch to get an answer based on what people are actually doing. And this is fairly new, and these things are just kind of added in and tested to see what works for users all the time. And you can also see here that actually there are no organic results above the fold. So I've got this main video, I've got people also ask, just in case it doesn't work for me, and I've got some more videos about how to fix a shower. So this is all content that Google is pulling in to try and answer that question for you without even looking at the organic search results, other than to pull that video in from YouTube. The last moment is the one that everyone really wants. It's the transactional search. It could be a variety of different searches that feed into this I want to buy moment. And if you're not a transactional business, say you're not an e-commerce business, it can be whatever your highest level of engagement is, whatever it is you really want someone to actually perform on the website. And as we've said earlier, this can also fall into the I want to know moments. It can be someone looking for a bit of information that then decides to buy, so they're closely linked. And there's a fine line as people use mobile devices and this immediacy around what they're looking for. These things are kind of really getting more and more closely linked together. It's not just a case of having some interesting information and then 3 months later someone will come back. For some businesses it is, but in the main, people are expecting that information to be very closely linked. If they want to buy something after reading about it, they can. So the kind of searches this could be some kind of brand name and offers, could be product reviews, could be a comparison. Best is a search that has seen huge rises in recent years. Google have highlighted this themselves. People looking for advice around what is the best of anything, because they know that actually now that sites are creating content for this, but also Google is really good at helping you understand what is the best of something. And it can also be a specific product. So if somebody is searching for your specific product, then we know they're in a transactional mode and they are very likely to purchase or be very close to purchasing from you. This can serve a product landing page, review sites, rich content, and voucher sites. Something that is, again, growing massively is the number of voucher sites that people go to look for vouchers before they come to your site. So I mentioned about a best search and how this has evolved. Again, another intricacy and subtlety of Google here. We've got search for best frying pan. I don't really know why I picked some of these searches, but it's just just to give you a general idea of what Google's doing. So Google knows I've searched for best. So it knows I'm looking for a comparison. So it gives me an answer box here with a page that has comparisons. So it's the best frying pans money can buy. I've got 3 examples there, but if you want to find out more, I can just click through to expert reviews. It also ranks adverts for me, which again is something that's fairly new, and we're not really covering ads here today, but you can see that it knows that I am looking for a comparison, but I'm also potentially in a purchase mode here. So I know now that that number 1 there from Amazon, from JML, is one of the top ranked products there, and Google's recommending to me that this is something that I should be really interested in. And again, actual organic results on that page are down below people who ask, so we haven't got to organic results. And this is, again, it feeds into understanding what people are looking for when they search, and that's what Google is trying to do. It's trying to serve the right answer first each time. But how does that really help you as a brand if you're trying to rank organically? Something we will come on to in just a sec. Just as a kind of an aside here, we've looked at the I want to buy moments, and I think it's just a really important message to say, don't just chase buyers. This cartoon really sums it up quite nicely. Everybody in marketing knows this. I know everyone comes under kind of internal pressures to attribute where did that sale or where did that goal conversion come from. You can see in the cartoon, this guy's been through various different touch points, got to buying on mobile, and a boardroom somewhere has said, right, that's it, well, it's come from mobile, we need to spend all our money on mobile. And then we know that's not how it works. And it's really important not to get too bogged down in where the transactions ultimately come from and then ignoring the path before that. It's really also important to try and be a little bit more like Google as a brand, and we'll come on to how you can do this. But it's important to take note of how all search engine result pages are different, depending on what the query is and the intent that Google reads behind that query. And again, as I've said, this changes constantly. So there's, at the moment, a really kind of harrowing thing happening in Thailand where people have gone missing in a cave. If you search for cave, just that broad word on Google now, that is pretty much all you'll see. You'll see news stories, you'll see pages from the BBC and various places about cave and that cave rescue. If you'd searched for cave 2 weeks ago, none of that content existed, and it would have been a completely different result. And this is how fast things can change on Google. So you may end up seeing a huge drop for a term that could be as broad as cave because something has happened somewhere, and the entire intent behind why people are searching for that word has changed. So it's really important to focus on understanding what's happening kind of in the broader market, but also understanding that Google doesn't stand still. And thinking about how your content works in the same way that Google does. Do you have content that matches various intent types? Do you have content that delivers for stakeholders but does nothing for consumers? The answer to that is probably every site does. It doesn't matter where you are. There will always be some content that perhaps you didn't want to publish, but somebody internally has said that is something that's really useful. We need to push ahead with this. So what should a brand do, and how can you actually understand what Google thinks is the intent behind the query? We've already seen, and this is another chance for me to get cats back in this presentation, that Google serves completely different results pages if you vary a query. So we're seeing cats musical, completely different intent. Everything on that page is different. So depending on the intent behind a search or delivering that is what drives Google. And it should really, in a perfect world, drive every piece of content that sits on your site. But it's not about content that perhaps you think is useful, and it's also not about what you think Google is going to like. This all boils down to what your users or prospects, if you're a lead generation site, want, and that you can see that Google likes. It's not about thinking, oh, Google will love this because we've optimized in certain ways. It's about understanding what Google actually thinks about a certain query found. So how do you actually read this intent from Google? How can you go to Google and see, okay, I want to understand what Google thinks about this. What is Google actually going to do if we go after this keyword? And this should really be key to any kind of content strategy or strategic search work. And if you can kind of think, for any keyword, do you stand any chance of ranking well for it? And most importantly, should you actually rank for it? Is it something that you should have any interest in? So how do you do this? Right, so put yourself in the mind of an e-commerce store that sells shoes. We're going to sell skate shoes online, and saying skate shoes makes me feel really old. I'm targeting people that are in the markets for the brand Vans. And we've done some keyword research, and one of the search terms we found is new Vans, because if you look, you've got a tatty old pair, you might think, okay, I'm going to buy some new Vans. It's a theory. There are 18,100 average monthly searches. So that's great. So you might think, oh, that's actually really good. If we can convert 1% of those, we get a click-through rate perhaps of 5%, we can convert a few of them into sales. That's really good. Let's go away. Perhaps we'll make a buyer's guide around this. We could link off the products on the site and cross-sell. You can certainly do all those things. But before you do that, take a look at Google. And let's see what the intent is that Google thinks. So we search for new Vans. And immediately you can see there's a slight problem here in that actually the intent that Google thinks here and the dominant interpretation behind that keyword or that query is vehicles. And there's a bit of a mix because we've got shopping ads that show me trainers, but everything else shows me vehicles. If you look at the next set of organic results, so I'll split the page in two for you here. There is nothing here other than this one brand site on new Vans as trainers. So what lesson can you take here? Well, it's kind of going to be a theme here. Don't just look at keyword volume. Actually understand what Google is serving for that query at the moment. And if it's something you should even be considering looking at, and it's something that doesn't get done enough, we can see that people want to rank for something because they think they should, because it's a keyword that sounds vaguely relevant to what they're doing. But actually, Google's telling you here that someone searching for new Vans, in the main, isn't looking for what you're trying to sell them. You can see in searches related to new Vans that new Vans trainers is there, but again, all of the general intent that you're getting shown here is about vehicles. So if we modify the term slightly, so we're going to show some purchase intent, perhaps that will help us. Surely if we're looking for buy new Vans, we know there that somebody is looking to buy possibly trainers in our theory here, but no. Actually, all we've done now is giving Google the idea that we want to buy a new vehicle. It's telling me where I can buy a new vehicle. It's still showing me ads around trainers, but actually now I've got a local pack result there to show me I can go and buy Citroen fairly locally. I've got 4 ads, and I've got no organic results linking to trainers. And again, this is about looking at keywords on paper and seeing volume, and then actually looking at the intent behind the search. And Google is helping you here by, it gives you the answers you're looking for. You're looking at this keyword, and it could be any kind of keyword query you're looking at. I'm using kind of really broad terms here just to make the point. But if you had someone come into you and said, we want to look at a piece of content around new Vans, you could realistically have thought that could be not a bad idea, and you could spend a bit of time doing that. Actually, you've wasted that time because you are very unlikely to rank in any sense here for this volume keyword. Now, it might rank for something else that's more niche, that's great, but the whole purpose of you creating this content was to focus around this keyword. Let's look at something a bit different. Father's Day gift ideas. So Father's Day has now been and gone, but I took some screenshots when it was in the run up to it. So this is a great one for a content team. So it's going to be a trending topic. We see on Google Trends that actually around Father's Day, this spiked massively. So it's a really good place to get some content going. And again, all the kind of social content things you might do, exclude that from this point. This is purely looking at what Google's going to return. You might want to say, right, we're going to create a blog focusing on the topic, maybe a buyer's guide again. It could be some kind of quirky Father's Day gifts to stop people just looking at beer and tools, which are the kind of stereotypes around Father's Day. And if you look at the monthly searches, you can see that there's 60,500 average, and in June you get a huge spike. Great, let's explore it again. What do we find here? Well, we've got ads for beer, obviously, because that's what fathers like, apparently. You get a selection of news topics news stories around the topic, which is great. But again, these are the Express, the Mirror, and the Sun. So these are kind of really big ticket items that you're not really going to push those out the news story. So, okay, let's look at the organic results. And you can see that they are largely e-commerce sites with Father's Day categories. So if you're not an e-commerce site here and you're looking to create a nice piece of content around some quirky ideas around Father's Day, actually, Google's telling you here you're not going to be sitting on the top of page 1. Maybe the second part of page 1. Have a look. Not necessarily. You can see here that there's rich video content, and this is potentially an opportunity for you. You've got Huffington Post and MSN, so they're two big hitters there, but there's one in the middle which is slightly smaller, which could give you an opportunity there to create some rich content and actually focus your energy on something that may rank and may be useful for you, rather than going down the idea of just creating a buyer's guide page. So again, you can see here that there are related searches here that could give opportunities. You can see you've got kind of extrapolations from the original. So you've got gifts from daughter, gifts from baby, gifts from bump, gift for granddad. Hard to say, apparently. It doesn't mean that any of the content you're going to create isn't useful for this search, and you may end up ranking on page 2, or you may rank against something different. But top level here, you've looked at focusing around this query, and you may have gone away and create those nice content, and then wondered why you didn't get the organic search and organic results for it. And this is why, because actually, when people search for Father's Day gift ideas, Google's telling you people are looking to buy. They're not looking necessarily for information. If you take one of the related searches and move it into Father's Day gift ideas from daughter, you see that the results page completely changes. The ads have now become less beer related. In fact, there's no beer in there at all. And you can see that we've got a few results in here that aren't e-commerce. They're curated content. They're from big magazine titles, but actually you can see that you start to have an opportunity here to create some interesting content that could rank. And you've found this because you've actually looked at what is ranking now, and you can see actually what you're going to need to do if you're looking for Father's Day gift ideas is go a bit more niche, and you can take this further and further and start to see that the results that are there are changing from e-commerce to perhaps more thoughtful, more informational, more no searches rather than the wanting to buy search. And this again, it just really shows you the point of using Google to your advantage. It's not just a case of finding a keyword, finding volume, coming up with an idea, and then going with it. If you don't look at the results page, you really are missing a trick in understanding the likeliness of it actually succeeding. So to recap then, how do you read intent from search engine result pages? You look at the top focus keywords or phrases. You look to establish the intent behind the listings. And that's kind of the key there. So you'll be looking at the results page and understanding what Google is telling you about intent. Consider whether the content you're planning actually serves that intent behind the query, and whether if somebody actually clicks through to your site, if you were in position 3, say on a page with e-commerce sites and you're not e-commerce, are you actually going to deliver the experience that somebody wants from a result there? You can see that Google's telling you actually you need to have an e-commerce focus here really, because this is actually what people are doing. This is what people want here. If you don't have that, you might rank quite quickly, but you may not see yourself ranking there for too long. What I want you to do from today's webinar, if you think of nothing else, is think about why you create content and why you've got content on your site. and make sure that everything that you do create or have on your site at the moment actually delivers what the user needs. Not necessarily what you think internally they need, but what Google and other external areas are telling you. Create content ultimately because you've got something to offer people that search for that keyword or query. And then, sure, cross-sell them, get them to do whatever you want to do on site, but make sure that content you're delivering to them is what they expected in the first place. Because if you don't do that, they're not actually going to become an advocate, they're not going to convert, they'll end up somewhere else, basically. Does the meta and content match? That's really important as well. If somebody reads meta on the results page, they get to the content and it doesn't match it, then actually you've, again, potentially lost an opportunity there because you're not linking up the experience for them. And again, it's likely that you're not going to be ranking that well for that term for long. Look at related searches for opportunities. We mentioned there's great opportunity there to actually expand on the search and find some niche opportunities for content that actually may be more in line with what you were looking to generate in the first place. And again, it's critical to remember it's not a one-off job. Google changes, just think of the cave example. You can think about this from anything. The way that we use language changes. Words come into language every year that we didn't use before in that way. Google will change around all of those words. New companies and products and brands will come into being that will completely change the landscape of search. You can't just do this once and then leave it, because you'll find that actually the intent may have changed completely within 6 months, within 2 months, within a couple of weeks, for the cave example. Just a quick look at related searches. So they're at the bottom of all the search engine result pages, and as we said, they give you great opportunity if your content isn't going to rank for that initial query perhaps you look for, but it gives you a great chance to find more opportunities and different niches that you can perhaps go into that may not be as high volume, but actually may give you something and may get you a customer or prospect actually looking at your brand, looking at your content and delivering something for you. So, for example, Father's Day gift ideas was high volume, but the related searches gave us some really great kind of more niche areas like gifts from Bump that may be more related to kind of a quirky piece of content that perhaps you were looking to work on. You may potentially be thinking, right, we've got loads of existing content, we haven't done this before, we haven't looked at intent, so we have to rewrite everything. No, you don't have to rewrite your whole website. What I suggest that you do is to look at key landing pages, look at queries that drive traffic to them, look at user behavior after landing. What do people do when they actually come through to a landing page? You can look at the query that's brought them there. You can look at the kind of top queries if you're running paid as well. That's quite useful to see what people are searching for as well. Look at what they're doing when they get to site. Look at how they got there. Look at the intent that Google's showing you around that query. Look at the other content that competitors are serving. So see what's relevant of your content behind that search, and look at look at what competitors are serving and see if there's any opportunities there. Are the competitors doing something slightly differently, and that's why they're ranking above you? You can have great keywords on site, you can have great meta, you can have technical factors spot on, you can have page speed, you can have all this done really well. That is massively important for SEO, don't get me wrong. But thinking kind of slightly broader than SEO, if you don't have content that delivers what your user's looking for, if you get them to the site and it's not what they're expecting, or it's not what they sought out when they actually started searching, it doesn't matter how many kind of SEO tricks and optimization tactics you've used. If that isn't right when they get there, they're not going to actually stay on site and do what you want them to do. So anything you can do to understand that why behind the search is absolutely vital. So use your site data to see where there are any engagement issues. If they come onto a page and then leave really quickly, but you think it's really interesting, go away and look at how they've got to that page. Then work backwards and try and match the content you've got to the intent behind that search. Look at the competitors and see what they're serving compared to what you are, and see where the potential issue is. Just gonna leave that there for 2 seconds. I know everyone in SEO says that content is king. I try not to, because actually it's an oversimplification. It becomes kind of a throwaway term that people throw around, but nobody really talks about what it really means. And the crux of it is not all content is good content. As we've seen here, there are some great opportunities there to create content that actually wouldn't necessarily have served you in the way you wanted them to. Search in 2018 moves towards and continues to move towards a common sense view. Google wants to give your customers what they want. It wants to give them the right information, the right chance to buy, the right website first each time no matter what they type in. That ultimately is Google's goal, because then people stay with Google, people advertise on Google and pay as we do and other brands and agencies do. If they don't get that intent element right, the whole thing falls to pieces. And it kind of comes into a quote here. Many marketers create content based on what they think is interesting rather than building content to meet a specific quantified customer need. This can translate into a lot of unhelpful content. Don't be that brand that just creates content because there's kind of an internalized content plan. Actually go away and look at what people want from that content in the first place, and then start from there. So, quick takeaways from today. Don't be led by internal looking content plans. Push back if somebody says we want to create content around this. Go and understand why someone will be looking for that content in the first place, and then actually kind of think from there. Think, why is this content important? Is this content actually serving a customer need? And what's Google telling me about that potential customer need? And do that objectively. And it's sometimes really difficult to do because you're looking at your own content internally, and that's where agencies can come in. It's not a sales pitch in any way. It can be really difficult for an agency itself to look at its own content. Just try and have that objective view of what Google's telling you about it, rather than perhaps what people internally are saying this is important. And use Google as a window into your users' brand interaction. But again, focus on users, not SEO tricks. This is about getting that intent right, understanding what it is, getting the content right to match it, making sure your site is top notch, the architecture is great, they've got opportunities to buy if they need to, there's nothing stopping them buying, there's nothing stopping them finding information or coming back and finding a tutorial video. Everything's nice and simple and easy to find for people if they decide they want to. So that's delivering a frictionless, engaging journey. And don't get complacent, because intent changes. And again, just search for cave and then search for cave again in a month and see how it completely changes. It all changes a lot. And the final takeaway, Google isn't perfect. There are going to be times where it shows you something you don't understand, and you'll ask your agency or your internal team, why has it happened? I honestly won't be able to tell you, because it is a case of it's trying to deliver the perfect result in a microsecond based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. It does a great job, it will get better, but for now, we work with it as it is. Which brings me on to the dreaded any questions slide. I know people have been asking questions throughout. If there are kind of wider questions, or as I said, if you want to send praise, but not negativity, obviously, you can email me there, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll happily answer anything you want to answer if you want any more detail. So yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Kier. And we have had a couple of questions. We haven't got time for them all, so I'm just going to quickly fire to you and then.
Yeah, sure.
So first up, throughout the webinar, you've spoken about sort of intent with Google mainly.
Yeah.
Does the same thinking apply to other search engines?
Yes, it does. The same top-level theory does. But if you ever use Bing, we'll use Bing as another example, and compare it to Google, you'll see that the algorithms are completely different. And Bing is going in a slightly different way. It's got some interesting differences towards Google. So where Google gives kind of answer boxes and tries to give a single definitive answer, Bing has kind of led the way in giving differing viewpoints around an answer. So where it's contentious, it'll give you two different answers. So they're trying to do slightly different things, but the same theory applies, that you can look at Bing or Google and see what it's serving for a certain result and understand actually what chance you have of ranking there. I'd say for most people, and it depends where you are in the world, but generally Google is going to be the main one to focus on. Public sector, for example, have a lot more Bing, but it's still going to be very much a minority. So focus on Google, but of course you can do the same thing on Bing or any other search engines that you use. You can still see, it's all publicly available, what they're giving in terms of results for people.
Can we be certain that what Google sees as the intent is actually what the user thinks?
No, you can't be certain of that. Maybe one day there'll be some kind of link between us and the machines, who knows, but at this point in time it's Google using seriously good kind of machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand, and using wide data sets to understand what people are looking for. It's kind of Google's main focus and job to match this intent and it's constantly trying to evolve to do that. We saw from the CATS example that it changes year on year and it gets so much better as we move on. And that's kind of, again, why Google exists. If anyone remembers Ask Jeeves, that launched on the idea of answering questions, but if you've actually asked it a question, it just looked at random keywords and really wasn't very good. Google was doing a much better job of that. But, you know, as I said, it's not perfect at the moment. You can have to use every tool at your disposal, and ultimately the main thing that people will be using to get to your site, if they don't know it directly, is going to be Google. And a lot of people don't even look at what results Google serves. So you're almost going to be a step ahead if you actually start to look at what Google is serving for a certain term. Learn from it, keep monitoring it though, because, you know, as I kind of said a couple of times, it does change. So if you've got key terms, keep going back and looking at them, see how the intent is possibly changing. It doesn't necessarily mean the customer intent is changing, but it means that Google's understanding it better, perhaps serving better content, and then you may see there are opportunities there to actually rank where you want to.
Okay, right, well, thank you very much, Kier, and thank you to everyone who has attended our webinar. Just as a little reminder for you all, when you signed up for our webinar, you would have been asked GDPR questions of whether or not you want to opt in to our emails. If you have said no, you obviously still will receive today's presentation. But if you did want to opt in, you can do by just replying to the email, which will be sent by myself hopefully tomorrow, and we'll obviously include today's recording. So thank you to everyone.
Yes, thanks everyone.
And bye.